In today's video, we're going to be installing a set of Tillett B10 seats in my C6 Z06. As you can see right here, I've got one of them laid out so far. This is the seat I'll be putting on the driver's side. You can see the padding here. Those stick in. Really nice finish on the Tillett seat. Nice support. This is a Sparco bracket. This is actually made for Sparco by a company called Planted. You can buy these direct from either company. That'll go on the floor, and then we'll mount the seat side rails, which are pictured here, to the seat and then to this bracket like so. And then I also have some Vetworks adapters to hopefully keep our airbag lights off on the dash. Before I forget, I do want to mention where I bought these Tillett seats from. I bought them from gregsraceparts.com. This was a really cool place to buy these seats from. I actually called and got a person on the phone. There's only 4 US distributors of these Tillett seats. I spoke to Greg himself, and he really helped point me in the right direction on what seats would fit me best. And here they are just a couple of days later. So big investment in the Corvette, brackets and seats, everything included. It was just shy of $5 grand. I do want to disconnect the battery since we'll be messing with the seat connectors. This was broken when I bought my car, unfortunately, from this little side here, but we'll just pull the negative off real quick. Before I pull my seat, I'll show you what I had set up in here prior. These are little Bray Krause lap belt hooks that bolted to either side of the factory seat in the seatbelt mounting locations. You can see where those came into play here. Factory seats, they look nice. They offer very little support whatsoever, especially the seat bottom. And then when you try to run a harness like this car has with an RPM roll bar, or really any harness bar, you can see this aggressive angle that they take around the seat. It basically renders your harnesses almost worthless. So this is a pretty much a mandatory upgrade for not only headroom with the helmet on, because when I would sit in this car with my helmet on, my head would be hitting the roof, and also, you know, would be above this roll bar point. So we're gonna gain a lot of clearance for headroom, and then we'll also have a proper set of seats for the harnesses to pass through. Feel bad, my shop's kind of a mess, the car's a mess, but we're gonna get this thing going. First thing you wanna do is pull these little tabs on this pin right here to get your little beauty cover off. That exposes one of the bolts for the front seat bracket. We're gonna do the same over here. Next step, we're gonna zip out these 15mm bolts. Nuts rather. And I did forget that this car does have a power driver's seat, so we're gonna have to hook the battery back up to get the seat forward to get those rear bolts. You can see how bad this seat was jammed into this main hoop on this RPM roll bar. My poor factory seat is heavily indented there. These seats have been in here for about a year and the roll bar has been in about a year and a half, so hopefully those take some shape again when they sit around. Here's this other 15 out back. And then one more. You can see those 2 connectors underneath there. We'll disconnect those. And then we've got to get at this little fastener at the bottom here for the factory seat belt. There's a better view of that seat belt bolt. This is a 17mm right here. I think that nut is from my Bray Krause kit, so the factory size may be different, I can't remember anymore. But you can zip that off and then the seat is free to come out. I forgot about this yellow connector underneath the back of the seat. You just pull that little blue tab out and then that'll be free to release as well. Just like that, we've got the seat out, and you can see the factory seat over here and our new seat. We're gonna have a lot more headroom here for sure. Going back to the outer seat belt mount, I forgot that I had my original bolts or nuts in the center console. These are 15, so most of you that are gonna be pulling your seats are gonna have a 15 here, just like you did on the brackets on the floor. Now that everything's clean in here, we'll go ahead and start looking at the wiring. I did just find my invoice from when I originally purchased this, so both sides, $139.95. I bought these back in 2023. I bought a different set of seats for the car and then did not fit the seats very well, so I just decided to scrap them and sell them. And now we've gone deep with the Tillets. But here is the direction set for both sides, it looks like. Oh, and here's the kit. Here is the planted bracket for the floor. You can see it captures all the factory locations, and boy, is that thing low profile. So a really nice fit in here. And then important thing to note when you're ordering these, I bought all of this stuff from Greg's Race Parts, by the way. He's a dealer of Sparco. So these were $185 a side for these brackets, but you want to be sure in this application for a C6 and probably a C7 and C5, but you want mounting tabs on both sides for your seat belts, because the buckle and the lower part of the factory seat belt mount to the seat, or to the factory seat, and you need to be able to obviously bolt those back in. So I did just put the brackets on the first seat just to kind of see where we're at. This is going to be quite the process of really fine-tuning all of this. So there it is, just sitting in the car with the harnesses pulled through it. I opted out of getting sliders for this setup. I was just going to mount the side brackets to this planted bracket, just to minimize weight and to optimize headroom. Here's the seat on its brackets. You can see I have 2 eyelets there for the sub belt. The lap belt is mounted already. I had to reorder some parts from VetWorks to maintain my telescopic steering. I realized once I was in the car that I probably did want to adjust the depth of the wheel. So I'll go ahead and get this hooked up and we'll start mounting the seat for the final time. I decided to remove the original seat belts. Unfortunately, there was just not a great way to mount the pre-tensioner from the factory seat on the inboard side here and clear the tunnel. You can see where I had this seat test fitted. It's already hitting the carpet on the tunnel pretty good, so no room for that. And then there wasn't a great way to fasten the bottom of this buckle down at the side of the seat either. I'm sure I could have made something work, but I'll be fine with these seat belts. For final assembly here, you'll see that I did have to pull the seat back off of the brackets just to get to these 15mm nuts that are the factory mounts to the car. My side rails are mounted right to the planted bracket for maximum headroom. Got the subframe, or not subframe, but sub belt little eyelets there. I'm gonna get ready to put the seat in now. Got it back here. I placed the padding in there. And I'm just gonna use this little clothespin just to pin this shut here. You can see that VetWorks connector and all this stuff. So I'm just gonna fasten that up, get this thing together. Barely see that pin right there, and that just keeps all the carpet down so we're not getting in the way of the belts or the bottom of the seat. I'll vacuum this one more time. Here's the final product, Tillett B10, mounted for the final time. You can kind of see how I will lay out the belts to get in and out of the car. Substantially lower than the seat on the other side if you look at it in relation to that main hoop. I'm gonna sit in here, see how the headroom is. Well, first impressions, I'm sitting substantially lower in the car. I can tell just by looking out the mirrors from where I had them adjusted before that I'm way lower, but now you can see the headroom is so substantial. I mean, my head, like this, my hat, the button on my hat would basically almost touch the headliner before, and now I've got all of this room here. The headrest is actually useful, so really happy with the choice on these seats. Having the telescopic function of the wheel again is really helpful just for your clearance to your knee. Like if this thing was too far in here, my knee would hit releasing the clutch, but now I can pull this wheel back and really have the perfect driving position. As for the passenger seat, we're gonna do the same exact stuff on this side. You know, obviously pull the seat out, all the electrical connectors, and then there is one more thing we'll have to do as far as the passenger presence system goes. Got the passenger seat out, and per the instructions from VetWorks, we have to remove that entire section of wiring from the bottom of this seat. So I'm gonna snap some photos just so I remember how the stock stuff goes back together, and then we'll get into the next steps here. But we're basically doing all of this so that we don't have any airbag warning lights on the dash with the aftermarket seat. Harness is all pulled out here. This is everything that you need to take out. Not that we're going to be using all of these connections, but we don't want to be hacking apart our factory harness either. The directions from VetWorks talk about pulling your passenger presence bladder out of the seat bottom. I didn't want to do that, so rather than doing that, I bought one on eBay, listing recommended by Dan from VetWorks, and you can see it's got this same tube that's under this conduit and this pressure sensor here. This one just shipped from eBay with that connector still attached. So we're going to strip all of this off and bunch it up like shown here so that we don't have a light on the dash The great thing about those Tillett seats is they came with these bags, and the factory seats actually fit in there, so just threw those in there. The next challenge with fitting these seats is this obvious gigantic box right here. That's the OnStar box. It's also an immobilizer, and you pretty much need to have that in the car. Somebody may have figured out how to bypass it in the past, but I'm not going to learn. So obviously we need to move this box, you know, 3 or 4 inches this way. Used a little bit of heat with the hair dryer and got this hot and was able to pull that off of the floorboard. This is really just 2 patches of some like dum-dum type of material. So I'm gonna use a little more heat, try to scrape the rest of this off, and then we'll come up with a good place to relocate this with that bracket installed. So this is where the floor plate obviously goes. This is like the general area where this box was. You can see I cleaned the floor off entirely. So we got 2 nice clean surfaces now. Basically what I'm gonna do is trim the carpet here and here, which will allow me to slide this harness back a little bit, and I'll be able to basically 3M tape this thing back to the floor right in that location. I want to make sure it's just clear of this bracket so we don't get any rattling issues, but I think that's going to work and kind of be minimal movement. And once it's down on the floor, we should have a good amount of clearance for when the seat's actually in here, so the bottom of the seat isn't resting on that. Okay, this is the plan right here. So I cut back this carpet, I removed some of the padding. You can see we've got plenty of room for this wiring harness. All the wires will be somewhat protected by this carpet. And then there's a little ridge in the floor. You can see that where my fingernail is. We're gonna tape this thing down with 3M tape, very similar to what it was in here from the factory. Keep it away from there and here. Hopefully we have a rattle-free installation. After much deliberation, I made a few changes to my plans. I had initially planned on removing the factory seatbelt retractor from this side like I did over there. And then I started thinking about it and realized nobody's ever gonna ride in this with me at the track for the most part. And for taking, you know, passengers on the street, it would just be more convenient to have the factory seatbelt. So I input some pictures. I will put in some pictures of everything I did to mount the factory belts. This is the factory fastener for the seatbelt pretensioner on the inboard side of the seat. It's basically a threaded bushing that attaches to a threaded shank on the factory seat frame. Here's that same bushing with a side view. I wasn't able to use it because of that taper that you see in it. It's only meant to be used in one direction on the tensioner, and I had to put a bolt through the other side of the tensioner, which ultimately required that I make that bushing next to it that you see there. Here's a view of my bushing installed through the smaller opening in the pretensioner. You can see it's bottomed out there. This is the larger side. You can see that bushing fitting flush inside that hole. Here's the finished product. I just got a grade 8 fastener there with large washers on either side of the pretensioner. Moving on to the outboard side, this is a bushing that I just happened to luck out on from my Bray Krause kit pictured earlier in the video. It fit perfectly inside this hole, and you can see that it basically almost captured that opening completely there. Next, I drilled a small hole pictured here below the main hole to capture the tang on the factory seatbelt receptacle on the outboard side of the seatbelt. And then this is what I've come up with as far as the wiring is concerned. You can see I have all the modules from that harness tucked in underneath the planted bracket. Here and here, they're just kind of, you know, in there with friction from the carpet. I don't think they'll move. I tucked all the wiring that I could in between the planted bracket and the carpets. You can see a big loom there. I've got the pretensioner running across. Back over to here, I think this is the seatbelt light connector, and then this is the pretensioner here. Both of those I've got tucked underneath there. The passenger presence bag was really too big to fit anywhere under here as it was all rolled up, and the seat would have made contact with it because basically the lowest point of the seat is going to be right about here in relation to where I have these brackets. So what I did was I made just a tiny little slit in this carpeting back here, and I've got my zip tied up bag back under there, out of view, ugly looking thing. So pretty decently clean looking install, considering all the wiring that you have to transfer over. So I already did, I did hook up the battery and made sure that we don't have any airbag lights on. So we're ready to install the seat for the final time. I just need to run down the factory 15mm bolts all the way around. Went to final mount the seat and found that the bottom of the seat was hitting the top of this box when I had it over here. So Just made a quick adjustment, moved this box over. The seat has somewhat of a bulb at the bottom of it down in here, so I'm hoping that it clears this and we can capture all of those bolt holes. Our seat is installed, really nice fitment, just about the same distance from the bar as the driver's side, and really finishes off the car nicely. Over here on the driver's side, I went ahead and got the sub belt mounted to those eyelets down below and put cotter pins in those. I readjusted the upper harnesses for the savings and distance that we had from the previous seat, and we're pretty much complete. Well, if you've made it this far in the video, I really appreciate you for spending your time here. That's going to do it for today's video. Let me know what you think of these seats down in the comments below. It was a big investment in the car, but I'm really happy with the overall clearance that I gained. I'm sitting a lot lower. It just feels way more secure in the car. The harnesses will be way more effective with these cutouts in the seats, and I'm ready to go to the track, hopefully in the next month or so. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.